This week on London Real, we have the American fitness coach, physical educator, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Steve Maxwell.
I've been training for 53 years, more than a half a century. People's bodies are exactly what their thoughts are. Why are you fat? What is the thinking that goes into believing that you're this fat person? You know, you tap into this universal power, which I call God, and it delivers exactly what you order. Proper exercise should increase strength, increase muscular endurance, increase cardiorespiratory function, increase mobility and flexibility, and decrease your chance of being injured. For every YouTube wonder, there's 10,000 guys that try the same exact routine that crashed, burned, got hurt. You don't see those guys.
London Real presents Steve Maxwell, Mobility for Life.
So face the line of fear and turn it into a little pussycat.
London Real Academy. Build the best you.
When I go in and look at a person or a business, I want to hear him talk about his dreams.
Am I living in alignment to the way I want to be living? And there's a feeling you get if you're not.
A community of action-oriented people that will keep you accountable to your goals. Sign up now for a free 30-day trial. London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. This week I had the incredible honor of welcoming Steve Maxwell back in the studio 1 year later from our first interview, which was absolutely received in an incredible way by all of you around the world. He just came back from Australia and people were stopping in the street talking about his episode on London Real. If you don't know Steve, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He is a physical trainer who travels the world and teaches people about mobility, body weight training, kettlebells, and really the secret that a lot of people find amazing is he's 62 years old and he just keeps going. He's in phenomenal shape. He trains with the Bar Stars guys in New York. He trains with Joe Rogan, and he just is a guy who knows how to live life. He also lives his life just nomadically. He travels the world with 13 kilos worth of stuff. He breaks down his entire routines and he just goes from place to place. He tried being a family man. He tried being someone with the house and the car and the kids, and he just rejected that. And he's got such a positive outlook on life. He has affirmations every morning. Gratitude's important, and just keeping his thought process positive. I just think Steve is just so amazing on so many levels. On top of that, he's got crazy stories. He used to train with the Gracies before there was a UFC, and so he's got stories about being Hoist Gracie's conditioning coach, about when people used to come off the street to his gym in Philadelphia and want to do the Gracie Challenge, which means they want to beat you up and they want your best. And so Steve tells all of these stories, including he talks all about how he finds breathing important, his newfound interest in marijuana. We talk about everything. So sit back, relax, and plug in. This is one of the most special episodes we had, and Steve's just a real guy with just real amazing energy. I hope I'm on his level when I'm 62 or 72 or whatever for that matter. I really love his energy. And if you want to watch this episode in its entirety with no stop, no break, no pop-ups, it's simple. You can go to londonrealacademy.com, click on the link above, sign in easily with your social media, and you can watch the whole show. It's an incredible experience. You can watch all of our shows there for free. But the real secret is what's happening on the Academy itself. If you become a Founding 500 member, you plug into a network of individuals around the world that are all about making themselves better. They're about taking action, being accountable, and just reaching their goals and pushing themselves to the limits. I'm amazed by the amount of energy that's on here and the amount of inspiration I get just from interacting with these people. We have amazing things happening on the Academy. We have Success Secrets, which is a section from this interview that's only available to premium content subscribers, and so you can see Steve's success secrets, his morning routine. You could have also watched this episode live on the Academy. We've got also bonus content. We've got footage from our Dan Pena live event at the Ritz. You've got my webinars, and this social network is absolutely incredible. It's really amazing how you can lock into people that are near you. You can come to London, come to the studio. We have focus groups every Friday, and it's just an incredible place to be. And you can be there in literally 30 seconds. You can click on the link below and you can log in, send me a private message, let me know how I can help you, and you can give it all a 30-day risk-free trial. I'm happy to give all of your money back if you're not 150% impressed by everything we have going on in the Academy. So really, there are no excuses not to check it out right now. I'm telling you, it's just incredible, and I really owe it all to the network of people. So come check that out, become a Founding 500 member, and in the meantime, sit back and relax and enjoy Steve Maxwell. London Real Set Design by Timothy Olton. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Steve Maxwell, who is an American fitness coach, physical educator, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. You've been named one of the top 100 trainers in the USA by Men's Journal, and you travel the world nonstop, teaching people like Joe Rogan and many others about mobility and physical training. You are 62 years young. Steve, welcome to London Real.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Brian. I really appreciate it. Had a great time last time.
Yeah, it was almost 1 year ago.
Almost 1 year.
You were here. I just checked it. And I remember we had this booked for months. I think 6 months ago, I think someone that works with you was like, Steve's going to be back in the UK. Shall we do it again? And I was like, yes.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, everyone loved our conversation. You know, you travel the whole world. I checked your website the other day, and it always has where you are. I love that about your site. And it was like you were in Cologne. I know you're in Hawaii. I think I asked you this question last time, but I want to ask you, what's it like when you get back to London? You know, what does it feel like that might feel different than Australia or America or Germany? Is there like memories you have or feelings you have when you get back to this town?
Well, it's very interesting because every place has its own little vibration. You can almost feel like maybe a person that's not real sensitive might not even notice, but I'm pretty sensitive. I can pick up the psychic vibe sometimes.
Yeah.
And London has a good feel to it. It always kind of has like this kind of uplifting kind of feel to it. Like I always feel happy here. Huh. And the architecture and everything reminds me very much of the eastern seaboard of the United States, like Boston, New York, certain parts of New York. Philadelphia, where I grew up, even Baltimore. I was settled by English, and so it's the same kind of Federalist style architecture. So I always feel right at home. I just have to be very careful crossing the street for the first couple of days and make sure I'm looking the right way.
Right. And how is fitness judged here? I think last time I was like, yeah, are people fit in this town? And you had your own opinions. Like how is the open-mindedness to what you do in a place like London?
People here are very eager to learn. I don't know whether you're aware, but the UK has become the second fattest nation in Europe now.
Okay.
Far behind the US. According to the statistics, Hungary is number one. UK is number two, with 38% of the population in the UK either overweight or obese, which still pales in comparison to America, where it's now predicted, and it's almost shocking to say this, 68% of the American population is either now overweight or obese.
Now.
It's horrible. Now,
68.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
And when you travel America, I mean, you see like the eyeball statistics from what you see. I mean, do you think that's right?
Well, I'll tell you, it's shocking. The last time I went through customs in America, my girlfriend and I looked at each other and says, wow, we're definitely back in the US now.
Right. And that's a good cross-section. Customs is a good cross-section.
Just the size of some of the people in line, it was utterly shocking, just shocking.
Right.
And I hadn't seen that for quite a while. I had been in Europe and abroad for a while. So when I went back, I was like, whoa, this is really something.
Right.
You do see it here, but not nearly with the frequency that you do in the United States. You're seeing it a lot in Germany as well. All the, industrialized countries with good high standard of living, food is just so readily available.
Right.
You're just seeing, and of course, as the fast food spreads. I'm going to give you an example. I used to go to Iceland for many, many, many years, from I think 2004. And I went there every year, and I noticed each year, progressively, I was seeing fatter and fatter people. And I asked my friend, Gujan Swanson, and I said, Gujan, is it just my imagination, or am I seeing people really, really gaining a lot of weight here? He says, no, it's not your imagination. He said, the American fast food industry has moved in, and people are really eating it up, and people are just getting really big here.
Right.
The sugary sodas and
yeah, it's like the high fructose corn syrup. Brazil's kind of the same way, right? It used to be the girl from Ipanema. Now when you go down to Ipanema,
it's like, whoa.
it feels like a cross section of America.
Please put your clothes back on.
And is that just because like the processed foods come in? And
I think so, man.
Okay.
There was an awesome show on Netflix called Fed Up about the fast food industry.
Okay, I haven't seen
It's
it.
pretty shocking.
Okay.
They kind of almost allude to a conspiracy theory almost, Like, for example, the American Pediatric Association, I think it's called, the doctors that take care of the kids in America, they're funded with Coca-Cola, man.
Really? I mean,
the show Fed Up, it's on Netflix.
Okay.
It's probably on the UK Netflix as well.
you're in such an interesting situation because you literally are nomadic. I mean,
I
you
am
travel all the
nomadic.
time. It's funny, I just offered Steve a London Real t-shirt, which is quite an honor. But Steve was like, I can't do it because you pack so light. I mean, you literally travel with things on your back. And we talked about this last time.
I like to carry my bag. I mean, try taking one of those goofy roller bags up and down the flights of stairs when you're changing trains in the tube, or try going down cobblestone streets in some of these little cities I go to, or in the snow, or in a muddy dirt path. I much prefer carrying it on my body. I can negotiate stairs, change trains, run if I have to.
Right.
Try running, clunking a roller bag.
And what's the size of your bag? Just
It's
so we know.
45 liters.
Right.
Which is, it's a Tom Ben Aeronaut, in case anyone's interested.
Okay.
It's one of the best bags made. You can check it out.
And it weighs about how much?
12.7 kilos.
12.7 kilos, and that's what you travel the world with.
That's what I travel the world.
That's
Everything I
incredible.
own is in that bag.
So since the last time I talked to you, a year from now, you've been traveling with 12.7 kilos worth of stuff.
I narrowed it down.
You cut it down.
At one point, it was almost 16 kilograms.
Okay.
There was even a time when it would even top out at 20 kilograms, which is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And I weeded things I just wasn't using. I just realized I still had more accumulation than I needed, and I got it down to 12.7.
Wow. I think I want to talk about more of this later because I think every man somehow secretly dreams of being you, of just traveling with things on his back and, going to the next town. You talk about you feeling energy. I mean, if you're constantly traveling without that home base, I think you are in tuned to everything you feel because you have a new group of peers every city. And you don't kind of go home and go to a base, which can be an advantage. I want to paraphrase something you sent to me earlier, and I think it speaks volumes about you. So let me just quote something you said to me. You said, unlike most fitness trainers and most people on the planet, I'm not anchored in one spot. I'm on the move, which exposes me to the world at large. I'm not stuck in one view, and neither am I sponsored, nor do I sell anything but my original ideas. I see the trends come and go and the universal patterns. I'm in a position to form some independent insights. That says a lot about you.
It does.
Can you explain that?
Well, I opted very early not to allow my YouTube page to offer advertising from anyone. I don't want to be holding to anyone. I don't want to be obligated to anyone. I let the information sell itself. If people want the information, good. But I don't advertise anything. I don't sell anything. Just my ideas. I sell downloadable videos on those ideas. But that's it. You won't see any advertisements for supplements. I'm not hawking any equipment or anything. Pretty much just my belief system.
And that's the decision you made on early in your career?
My career isn't about the money. I believe the money will come as a consequence of doing what I do and doing it to the best of my ability. But the money is not the reason why I do things. So the only reason I would, hawk supplements, sell equipment, all this type of stuff, I do have suggestions for people and so forth, but it would just be purely for profit. But that's not how I operate. Okay. Yes, I need money. Yes, I like money. Yes, I make money. But the reason for my existence is not to make money.
Okay. And talk to me about, I was just thinking, without having a home base, like even like a home gym, if you had like a home gym, you would go to different places around the world, but when you come back, a lot of your home ideas would just be reinforced. But for you, you literally go from spot to spot. I'm sure you absorb ideas like a sponge.
I try to, I'm always learning, always picking up new things. I always tell people, I don't know everything, but I know a lot.
Right.
I know a lot. But there's always a little bit more to learn, to know. So I'm a student. I'm a student. I still, even I've been training for 53 years, more than a half a century. And in that time, you do pick up a lot of good ideas, but a lot of them were pretty bad ideas too.
Right.
But you only know until, when you experiment and actually try that stuff out. But I'm still picking up some new ideas, formulating new plans. And of course, as you age, your program morphs and changes, as with your energy, with your time, with your age. Obviously I don't train in my 60s like I did back in my 30s. It's, a whole different thing.
Right. And before we roll camera here, we were talking about how when you ran, it was basically a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym in Philadelphia. Guys would come off the street wanting to challenge, right?
It was the very first Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school on the eastern seaboard of the United States. It was before anybody else. It was called Maxwell, Maxwell Sports Fitness.
Okay. What year was this?
We started in 1990.
Okay.
And so I was doing jiu-jitsu for a few years before the first UFC, which was 93.
93, right. Yeah.
And I was Royce's conditioning coach. I actually introduced him to his wife.
Okay.
She used to be my kid's babysitter. And she also was a very good exercise instructor in her own right. And she was supporting herself with the babysitting and the fitness training when she was putting herself through medical school.
Okay.
She ended up graduating from the School of Podiatric Medicine.
And you trained Royce out in Torrance, or he came out and saw you?
He came out and stayed with us.
Okay. What was it like training him for conditioning? Was he reluctant to be in the UFC, or was he game? I mean, I know obviously they chose him, and they consciously wasn't Hickson. I guess Horian chose Royce, or what was that like getting him ready?
Well, Horian wanted to showcase Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
A lot of people in America were unfamiliar with ground grappling, at least the way the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys did. And he was quite surprised to see that people didn't know. And he wanted to showcase, and he was very confident that if a guy doesn't know Jiu-Jitsu, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. And he purposely chose Royce because Royce was relatively thin, not muscular, really nice guy, really sweet, nice, easygoing personality. So he was. If you would meet the guy, you would never guess that he was the fighter that he was. Right. And he wanted to show the world that if Royce, my little brother, can do this, anybody can do it. It was brilliant. And of course, the rest is history. Here, this young Brazilian kid, 175 pounds soaking wet, not strong at all, great flexibility, good endurance, tremendous confidence in his jiu-jitsu skills. You have to have a lot of confidence to do what he did.
Yeah.
And, he definitely had great jiu-jitsu.
And you trained him before that for endurance?
Yeah, I was doing strength and conditioning with him.
Okay. What kind of things would you do?
Mostly super slow. I was very much into slow-mo training, working his joints, preparing his joints. The idea of the training was to help prevent injuries,
Okay.
and toughen his joints and his tendons and so forth.
And that's about what? Rolling very slow? Or
No.
strength?
I mean, actually doing chin-ups and push-ups and press-ups and weight training done in a very slow, high-tension manner. It's all part of high-intensity training.
Okay.
And it worked very well. I was just trying to build as much strength as I could. And he got his conditioning from actually getting on the mat and just rolling a lot, with a lot of guys, big guys, little guys.
Right.
And it was amazing what he did.
It's interesting because like you're an interesting guy to talk to anyways, just because of what you do, how you travel the world. But the fact that you saw all this happening and you trained, Division I wrestling, and then you trained with the Gracies. I mean, how does all that knowledge affect the way you look at training today? And when you give a seminar, or when someone calls you up and they're like, Steve, I need to get to X, Y, and Z. Like, how does all that former training, wrestling, combat training you've been through, how does that affect?
Well, wrestling pretty much saved my life. I mean, I was destined to be like a fat little American kid, and I was getting picked on quite a bit in the neighborhood, I think I told this story before, but my dad saw, I was like, hey, man, I got to toughen this kid up a little bit. He was a former Navy boxer during World War II. He was the actual Pacific Fleet bantamweight champ. He was under Admiral Halsey during World War II.
Okay.
So he was a tough old guy. He was a West Virginia farm boy.
Right.
And so he was teaching my brother and I boxing and some of the other kids in the neighborhood. And I hated boxing. I hated getting hit. And I used to get furious and throw the gloves off and tackle my brother down to the floor. And my dad said, you're no boxer, man. We're going to get you out for wrestling. And that was my first love affair with sports. I pretty much wasn't very good at anything. Too slow for track and field, didn't have the endurance for distance, didn't have the speed for the sprints, too little for the field events.
Right.
Gymnastics didn't exist in those days. Soccer was completely unknown. The American never played that game.
Yeah.
Too little to play gridiron style football.
How old were you when you started wrestling?
So I was 12 years old.
12, okay. And you could wrestle in a lightweight class, so
Exactly.
you could
And
go
I had
crazy.
instant success. And there's nothing that jazzes a kid more than that type of success. And then I just became obsessed with it. And all my training was always geared towards performance. I never got into bodybuilding. I never got into weightlifting for weightlifting's sake. A lot of guys that go to the gym, it's all about the demonstration of strength.
Yeah.
All my training was geared towards making me a better wrestler for on the mat. So I had a real performance mentality right from the get-go.
Right.
So when I look at training, I was never into the feats, the stunts, the lifting as a competition. It was always more towards making me a better athlete.
Right, which is probably 1% of the current way people train around the world today. I mean, just if you go to a gym now and you say, I want to train or I want to work out, almost by definition, you're kind of getting to goals of lifting and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they set up these arbitrary standards and someone just picks it out of a hat. I mean, like 20 pull-ups is supposed to be the gold standard for pull-ups. Who says? And what rep speed are you using? I guarantee if you're doing 3 seconds up and 3 seconds down and completely stopping at a dead hang each rep, you're not going to get 20 reps.
Right.
But if you're banging them out like 1 second reps, but what does that mean? Or double body weight deadlift is supposed to be the gold standard. Who said?
Right.
I mean, what does that actually mean and who's setting up these standards? I mean, I never did understand that.
Right, and you were training for performance. So
I just wanted to be better at my chosen sport. So I was looking to make myself as strong as possible on the mat. And that's a whole different mentality.
Yeah, so I wrestled 1 year in high school. I wrestled when I was junior year, 17 years old. I changed high schools in San Diego. I was like the nerdy science fair computer programmer kid at one school. I went to a new school and I went into the wrestling class because the other kid that no one had any friends with was my friend, and he's like, you got to do wrestling. And I went in there, and I kid you not, Steve, I went from like this to like this in about 4 months. And they had us doing stuff that I had never gotten close to throwing up from running hills. I had never understood that you're going to drill for 2 hours. Like, I didn't have any idea what we were doing.
It really builds that work ethic, doesn't it? By the way, it's no accident that in the UFC, I imagine your listeners all know what the Ultimate Fight.
Probably, but yeah.
I'm just guessing.
But it's
every single weight class is dominated by former NCAA wrestlers. And I wrestled a Division I NCAA school, made varsity the last 2 years, and had a pretty decent record my senior year. I was 18-2-1, and was very successful in that particular martial art.
And you're really taught to break an opponent. Is that really what the top schools are? I mean, for 6 minutes, you're really trying to...
It's very aggressive.
Right, okay.
And interestingly enough, I had way more injuries in wrestling, which is supposed to be a safer martial art, right?
Right.
So it's a safer sport. And I had way more injuries in wrestling than I ever did in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow, okay.
Interestingly enough.
And was it a breaking mentality? I mean, it is a very mental game. It's a very physical game.
It's very physical. It really grinds you down as the season progresses. at the end of every year, man, I used to just be so weak and literally just get sick.
Because you're
And
fighting
then
every week,
every
and you're
week,
cutting
immune
weight every
system,
week.
And I was cutting weight, and it was
Right.
brutal. But I'll tell you, it builds a mental toughness, and it builds a work ethic like nothing else. And I don't think it was any accident. All the great philosophers, all the ancient Greek philosophers were all wrestlers.
Wow.
All wrestlers.
I hadn't really thought about
Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, they all wrestled.
And so you carry that mentality kind of into your current way you look at training, which is a functionality based, as opposed to, I know you said you don't like gymnastics because, it's the accomplishment of a feat. You don't like pull-ups just to do them, or a body weight because someone says to do something. So it is kind of...
Well, yeah, I mean, let's say, for example, the urban gymnastics have become pretty popular. They have these championships. Right. And look, I'm not against kids out having fun. Believe me. I used to hold a human flag, with the arm straight. I could do that for 30 seconds. 1982, my record was 31 seconds. That's a pretty long time to hold a flag. But none of those things are sustainable. And they do erode your joints over time. So a lot of these young guys are already suffering from elbow and shoulders. In my way of thinking, proper training should preserve your youth, should prevent injuries, not cause injuries. So they've made this urban gymnastics kind of a sport. And look, I'm all for getting kids out from the video games, out in the parks. It's healthy. But, they train like kamikazes, and they just overtrain, and they don't realize the damage that they're doing to themselves. And what's really frightening now is there's these coaching courses in how to perform these feats and stunts, and it's going a little bit more mainstream. And I think it's a step in the wrong direction. First of all, why would you ever want to become a certified coach in something like that? What, you're going to take businessmen and businesswomen and destroy their joints with this kind of stuff? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and you spent some time with the Bar Stars guys.
Yeah, and they're lovely guys.
And you had an amazing video.
Great.
Yeah, we talked about it last time, but like all those guys' shoulders are shot, right?
Well, shoulders and elbows, they're not shot right now at this point, but I think they're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're realizing that, hey, there is a due date on cottage cheese for a reason.
Okay.
You don't stay young forever, and you don't see very many people much over 40 years old doing any of that. Every once in a while, you'll see a YouTube clip of some guy in his 50s or maybe even his 60s, but they're not doing those type of stunts. Right. They're just doing chins and dips and such, And every once in a while, you'll see some old ex-gymnast doing front levers or something, but you can count on one hand the number of guys doing it. And there's a reason why, because that type of training is unsustainable. And if that's your be-all, end-all, and that's the whole reason you are training, you're going to quit. You're going to get disappointed because you're not going to be able to do that stuff anymore. There has to be something deeper driving you when you train.
Right.
When you train.
What do you like to see your clients get involved in? Is it combat stuff? Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it kettlebells? What kind of things do you think promote longevity when it comes to training?
I think just your simple bodyweight exercises are fantastic, but I have my own system that I created over the years.
It's the 5 pillars?
Based on the 5 pillars.
Okay. Which are what?
Pushing and pulling, both horizontal and vertical. So for every vertical pull, let's say chin up or pull up, you want to do some type of pushing movement overhead. Okay. Same thing for every push up you do, you need to do a bodyweight row. Some people call them reverse push up. And then you have your squat, which is a level change. You hinging motion, which is hard with bodyweight. The hinge, it's kind of like that deadlifting motion. Yeah. That's the hardest thing to get with just body weight. And then you have rotation and anti-rotation type movements. Some of the 5 pillar, I didn't create this idea, by the way, this movement-based exercise. But there are different versions of it. Some people include loaded carries, like dragging things or carrying things. But I didn't. I liked the rotation, anti-rotation stuff.
Okay.
And then I have a 6th category, which isn't one of the pillars, but it's ancillary movements, things like calf raises, neck work, finger grip work, for some of the smaller muscle groups, ab work, perhaps, that type of thing. You
were one of the first guys to grab a kettlebell in America and talk about kettlebells. Do you still use them?
Only because I travel all the time. It's hard to get a hold of one sometimes. Occasionally I'll borrow them. When I have a big seminar, wherever I'm staying, usually my host will have them. I'll borrow them and hone my skills a little bit. So I'll do a few weeks here and there. I mean, in truth, that's the one thing I miss about my travel. I would like to have a kettlebell available. I do love swings.
Okay. Swings.
Swings are fantastic.
Okay.
Hard to duplicate.
Right. Okay. And then what about snatches? Are they? You got to be tricky with those too.
Well, the risk to reward ratio is not there with the snatch.
That sounds like what your training's all about these days, is risk to reward.
Yeah, you look at benefit to risk. You weigh the two sides, like a financial measure.
Right. Okay.
You list, and the snatch is one of those ones that it's certainly a hard exercise, but there are certainly a lot of potential risks to people's limbs, shoulders in particular, but elbows, wrists, and so forth. Of all the exercises, all the kettlebell exercises, that's the one that seems to create the greatest amount of problems with people. Okay. You hear about more injuries associated with that particular lift. So you got to be very careful.
Okay.
I'm not telling people not to do it, but you just got to look at why are you doing it? Because you heard it's good or whatever, I mean,
it was funny.
You just got to be smart about the training.
Yeah, I had Elliot Holtz here a couple weeks ago, and I had just done a leg workout, and I was like, Elliot, I just did this leg workout, and I don't know why I did it. I had this squat thing I do and this deadlift thing and I do, and I did this, lunge with a kettlebell, and afterwards I don't know why I did it. I think I did it because I've always done it, and I heard it was good, but I think sometimes we don't even know why we're training anymore. You must see that all the time.
All the time. People just blindly following this program or that program. People kind of get locked into cults like, CrossFit or the Jim Jones thing, and they're just blindly following these programs that they're putting out without any rhyme or reason. People need to think for themselves and figure out what it is that they need instead of just following these, one size fits all but doesn't fit me type philosophy.
Right.
I like to get people thinking for this. That's one reason I came out with the 5-pillar workout. People can mix and match and put together their own workouts. I try to make it simple.
What do you do when you meet someone? I mean, how do you assess for them what's right for them? I mean, it must be such a complex.
Well, I mean, if I'm doing a personal thing, I do like a little movement screen. First, I put them up against the wall and do a postural analysis, look at their posture.
That tells you a lot.
I look at, bilateral deficiencies, and, just people are just really crooked, and you can just see where they are undeveloped. One side versus the other side. Most people in modern society have what we call forward head and kyphotic curve. It comes from humping the computer. Okay. And interestingly enough, the fighter posture is very similar to the desk jockey posture.
The fighter is the hunched shoulders.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Inward rotation. Anyway, I look at all these things.
Okay.
Look at the way they stand. I watch them do a couple of simple moves. Just asking a person to do a flat foot squat on the floor tells me volumes about their ability to move. Just having a guy get down and do a push-up for me, I can see so much. Forward neck collapse, lower back collapse, internally rotated shoulders, just the way he uses his muscles to perform the push-up. I listen for the breathing patterns.
Okay.
So I basically start with the breath work because it doesn't make any sense at all to start loading a person up with resistance training and weight if the guy can't even use his breathing apparatus properly and if he has poor movement patterns.
Talk to me about breathing, because I was listening to you recently, I think talking to Joe Rogan about how a lot of us are breathing from the upper chest and like almost the head area, which is
even worse. A lot of people inhale through the mouth breathing.
Okay.
That puts you in a chronic panic state because the natural breathing of any infant when first born is nasal breathing, right? Diaphragmatic. So you're using the lower lobes of the lungs. There's 2 lobes on one side and 3 lobes on the other side. And a lot of people are only using a very small portion of the lungs, usually upper chest. That puts you in a chronic stress state because the upper part of the lungs is for dire emergencies only. That's fight or flight stuff.
Okay.
So they're basically bathing in these negative stress hormones all day.
You're telling your brain all day you're in a
you're in
state.
stress. You're in this hypervigilant state.
Right.
People are moody. They don't understand why they're tired all the time. They don't understand why it's so hard to lose weight because it also puts you into fat storage mode because your body's perceiving even just your breathing as some sort of an emergency. People don't understand why they're real fussy or they snap, because they're stressed. So once you learn how to inhale through the nose and use the lower lobes of the lung, you go into a calm state. And a lot of people, when they train, they just go silly buggers. It's all mouth, panic breathing, upper chest. It creates, you become over-adrenalized.
Right.
When I train, I try to stay as calm as I can, Brian. I try to stay super calm and just use the lower lobes of the lungs and try to not become adrenalized. You're going to get the negative stress hormones anyway from the stress of the workout, but you try to minimize it. You know who used to breathe like this a lot? The Gracies. The Gracie family knew how to breathe.
Right. Hickson,
Hoy, they all knew. I used to really think, they used to make some strange sounds sometimes when you'd spar.
Like what?
Keeping the diaphragm soft.
While they're sparring, while they're rolling jiu-jitsu.
A constant exhalation going. Okay. No tension in the body. No tension in the body at all. I taught Hoyler Gracie his first kettlebells, and I was trying to teach him some tension exercises. And he was laughing because we had to drop down to a 12. Now Hoyler, I mean, he could kick my ass with probably one hand. I mean, this guy is, 4 or 5-time world Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion, 4-time Abu Dhabi submission wrestling champ. There's no doubt that this guy is strong. You can feel it. He got that mat strength.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the requisite strength for handling kettlebells. And it was funny. He was laughing. He said, Steve, all my life, I tried to avoid tension. He said, this is really hard for me. So I had to go down to some pretty light weights to get him over the learning curve, the hump.
Right.
But that's what I'm talking about. When those guys would wrestle, what kept them so flexible, mobile, and relaxed was the breath work.
Okay. And
they weren't gulping, gasping, mouth breathing, panic breathing. There's a particular noise that people make. It's a partial glottal closure. It sounds like this.
Yeah.
It's called a Valsalva sink. Very dangerous, very harmful. It literally shaves years off the end of your life because of the type of stress that it creates in your body. And you get all this tension and stress.
And people do that when they train hard, or they do that when they're
when
stressed?
they roll hard, when
Right.
they lift weights, when they run. Man, I had this chiropractor send me a videotape of him doing kettlebell swings. I just did it as a little test. I just wanted to see what he was doing. Oh, it was just so horrible. I couldn't watch it.
Because of the breathing was so
I had to take him off the
strained.
kettlebell swings for a while.
Right.
We've been working on breath now for a few weeks. I'm going to turn him back onto the kettlebell swings, but man, I had to get that breath under control. Just all the gasping and gulping.
And do you think Hickson and Hoist learned that from Elio, or do you think they just learned it by rolling jiu-jitsu with other guys and they just copied that? Or do you think they were ever
The
taught?
master Elio knew. He probably learned it from Maeda.
Right, okay. The Japanese guy that taught him.
Yeah,
okay.
But it was common knowledge with a lot of the old jiu-jitsu masters, the breath work and how to stay relaxed. Elio was always very calm when he would fight.
Right.
And Hickson actually in his seminars will spend the first hour and a half just doing breath work. His son Kron, it was just a real chip off the old block, does the same thing. That's how important they believe the breath work is.
Just teaching people the breath
But
work
back in the
first.
day, it was like the family secret. They never taught it to us.
So you used to say you thought they were making fun of you when they're rolling.
Sometimes because they would do some funny little patterns,
Right.
And it was just all a matter of keeping relaxed.
So I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I was 32 years old, and I got my purple belt many years later. But I was your typical tense up when I would fight kind of guy, because I didn't know any better. I had no training in it really. I had that 1 year wrestling, and in wrestling they don't necessarily teach you to be calm.
No, they don't teach.
In wrestling,
It
you
is
got-
just one big ball of tension, man.
In wrestling, you got these 3 2-minute rounds that are the longest 2 minutes of your entire life, and it's all about heavy.
Just go,
It's
go,
not-
go,
it's
go,
not
go,
really. There's
yeah.
not the art in martial art really in wrestling. I would say maybe it's
Well, there's definitely finesse and technique, but
Yeah.
it's said in wrestling, it's 50% strength, power, and endurance, 50% technique. In jiu-jitsu, it's like 90% technique and like 10% strength, power. At least that's the way it should be.
No, I think that sounds about right. And I didn't understand the breathing, and I had to be constantly schooled by my instructor for any combat, even boxing and everything, just to try to relax, which is, for people listening who've never trained or got into a fight or even a roll, it's the opposite thing you would think, that people in a fight to fight effectively, you should be relaxed.
But it's really funny because it was either Hoist or Hoyler. One of the guys was saying that when you're coaching a guy from the sidelines and you see that he's getting really tense, and you never tell the guy to breathe. You hear guys say, breathe, breathe. No. You say, exhale. You yell to the guy,
Okay.
exhale.
Exhale.
And you just release that stress and the tension through the exhale. And you know, because literally you'll find blue belts out there holding, almost passing themselves out from holding their breath, and they get so excited they forget to breathe.
Right. And Hickson made the breathing really famous in the movie Choke, where he was doing there was a good 10
He's doing
minutes.
a lot of the yogic breathing.
The yogic breathing, and he was really moving his stomach and all of that type of piece. And so I guess it's something similar that you would feel when you would roll with the Gracies, that constantly controlling their breath and exhaling.
All about breath control. And I went to the Summit of the Breath Masters in Moscow. I trained with Russian martial artists.
Okay.
There's a
Summit of the Breath Masters.
Summit of the Breath
When
Masters.
is that? Oh.
It was in Moscow about 3 years ago,
Okay.
two years ago. Man, time just runs together sometimes.
Well, leave
Brian, you know, I wake up some days and I have to think, what country am I in?
I can't even imagine.
I don't even know the day of the week sometimes.
How long have you been
every day's
doing
the same.
this nomadic lifestyle for?
Since about 2005, I guess.
2005, so 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably is the greatest way to extend time, because you probably just...
It is. Time just has no meaning to me. Every day is the same. Every holiday is the same. You know, Christmas is like any other day. A birthday is like any other day. I don't celebrate that stuff anyway. I was just laughing to my girlfriend. I don't go to weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, christenings. I try to avoid all social contrivances.
Okay. Because there's no point in
There's no
fixating
point to
on
it.
that, and you don't
There's
want
no
to be
point
a part of that
whatsoever.
energy.
I don't want to be part of that collective consciousness or the collective energy.
Interesting.
All the things that most people consider important, I don't consider important at all.
What else is along that besides...
Because that same mentality that goes into placing importance and all this type of stuff, anniversaries and all that kind of stuff, is the same mentality that goes into collecting material goods and buying the little house and getting the 2 cars and the TV in every room and having a closet full of clothes and then amassing so much stuff that you have to rent extra storage space. You know, and you have your attic full and your basement full and your garage full and you have extra storage. I mean, this is not uncommon in a lot of places, especially
in America, it's very common.
Very common in America.
And you used to be that guy. You did all that.
I was a householder.
Right.
I was a householder.
And so now you don't have the material possessions. You don't do
I
these...
also choose to step clear of the collective consciousness.
Right, which is the occasions. What other parts of the collective consciousness do you steer clear of?
Well, generally speaking, what most people deem as great, I'll usually go the opposite way.
Okay.
You know?
So amassing money,
Yes.
material possessions,
Yes.
celebrating contrived occasions.
Yep.
What else?
Social, obligatory social. I got to go to Aunt Millie's for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Oh my God, we're late for Christmas dinner. You know, that the type of pressure that people put on. Oh, it's my mother-in-law's anniversary.
Right.
It's like, no, thank you.
So it's a whole nother group of
I've
people.
just dropped out of that whole scene.
If people already weren't jealous of you, now they are again, Steve. So
Well, so often, you know, we have this weird societal obligation towards relatives that we don't even like.
Right.
We don't even care about. I mean, how many people out there listening don't really particularly care for their own family? Maybe their family aren't nice people, you know? Maybe their dad and mom just are real shits, you know? And what's this obligation that people are brainwashed into? I don't have any animosity whatsoever towards any person. I really, truly don't. So it's not because I have animosity or whatever, but I just choose to stay out of that whole mindset.
right. It's interesting, if you stop going home for those holidays for all the parents, it might seep into the rest of your life, and you might stop working at that job that's probably subconsciously doing to make your parents proud of you. And I guess it seeps into all other parts of your life, right?
I mean, how many people have actually gone into careers and jobs and so forth that they didn't particularly care for because of parental pressure? How many girls have gotten married just for parental pressure? How many people have had children that they didn't particularly want, but it was just like an expectation and pressure? You know, this is your life we're talking about.
Right. What's the Fight Club line? Working jobs we hate, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like.
Exactly. So I have just...
You just reject it all.
I just rejected it, man.
I love it.
And look, I'm not looking down on people. I'm not putting people down. I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm not saying everyone should just do what I do. No, not at all. But I am trying to lead by example. I'm saying that, hey, look, man, if you aren't happy in that particular situation and it isn't working out for you, hey, look, here's another alternative lifestyle. Here's something that you can do.
You were married 3 times.
I was.
You did the family man thing, and you
I did.
realized it wasn't for you, right?
I wasn't cut out for it. I wasn't a good father. I just wasn't. I was more of a kid than the kids. I was the kind of dad that the kids would come out from school and say, screw that homework, let's go to the movies. And in some ways, I think I might have done them some good. Maybe I got
Right.
them out of that whole mindset of achieve, 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 so I can go to school and I can get the degree, and then I can get the job, and then I can get the house, and I can marry the woman, and then I can get the kid, and then live happily ever after, which is a pipe dream. I don't see that happening.
Right.
I don't think marriage is done well anymore. I don't see good marriages. I would say most people that are married probably shouldn't be. And this may raise a few eyebrows, but I'm seeing people having kids that have no business having children whatsoever. They are just screwing these kids up.
They're barely keeping it together themselves.
They're barely keeping it together themselves. I don't know what this drive is. It's almost like these kids are an accessory. And I'm sure you see it down here in London, you know, these women pushing these baby carriages with this entitlement on their face, like clear the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I'm pushing my precious snowflake through, all make way for Princess Snowflake. She's so important. And the parents don't realize the kids are pretty average, pretty ordinary, not all that good looking, probably never really gonna amount to that much. You know, you gotta just be real, man.
And you realized that the family man thing wasn't for you. You know, not many guys say that. You know,
No,
usually.
I wasn't cut out.
Right.
I wasn't.
but
I
like
was
you
miserable.
Okay, you were miserable. So even though the anti-father could have been a good thing, like you said, you might have taught your kids to be in the moment and not do all that things. You were miserable. It just wasn't a role that you liked. You liked new things. You like doing what you want to do.
I like traveling. I like moving around. And there was a time I tried to convince myself, but I can remember sitting in the living room of my South Philadelphia home. Beautiful house. You know, I had all the material things. I had the gym, the jiu-jitsu school, the 4-story brownstone house, you know, the 2 kids. I was making a lot of money back in the day, you know. I mean, relatively speaking. Certainly, you know, living a very comfortable lifestyle. And, you know, I'd go home and I'd be in there, is this it? This is my life? I'm just gonna die in this house? Wow. It just didn't seem right somehow.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.
And just get old in this house and die. I just felt like there was more to it than that.
How did you break out?
And there was.
And there was. But how'd you break out of that? Because so many people listening right now are like, that's me, Steve. That's me. And, you know, you see that's Don Draper, you know, on Mad Men. I'm probably going to watch that show. It's on TV.
You know, I've been meaning to.
Okay.
I'm going to binge watch it. I'm going to just
it's a guy in
watch
this-
season 1, 2, 3, 4, and just go, man.
It's a guy in the 60s at an ad agency in New York City, and, you know, he's always struggling. He just doesn't seem to be
Yeah,
happy.
like when I grew up, I can remember the
So how did you break out? Because a lot of guys would have stayed there. They don't even know how to get out of that situation.
You know, in some ways I was lucky.